Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we grab a whole stack of interesting sources, could be articles, research, maybe even our own notes, and we pull out the absolute key takeaways for you. Basically, the shortcut to getting properly informed.
Exactly.
Today, we're diving into something pretty profound, something ancient thinkers actually called a medicine for the soul. A remedy for what really weighs us down. What if, like, this timeless wisdom, stuff from thousands of years ago, across totally different cultures, actually holds the key to living a more fulfilling, balanced life?
That's the big question, isn't it? And our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack what virtues are. We've got this fascinating pile of sources going way back to ancient philosophy, religious texts, all the way up to modern psychology.
Well,
So we're going to explore how these enduring qualities have been understood, across time, across cultures. And maybe most importantly, why getting your head around them might just be the ultimate shortcut to, human flourishing.
exactly. And this isn't just like abstract philosophical talk, though we'll definitely touch on some of that foundational stuff.
Sure.
The goal here is to show you that virtues are actually incredibly practical. They're actionable tools for living a life with, more purpose and, frankly, deeper well-being.
Yeah.
And I think to kick things off, we really need to nail down a distinction that gets fuzzy a lot of the time. The difference between values and virtues. It's a subtle thing, but it can really shift how you see this stuff.
Oh, absolutely. It's crucial. So when we talk about values, fundamentally, they're personal standards, right? They're about what's important to an individual, so they're subjective, often aspirational. Think about the things we often hear talked about as values, especially in but here's the really striking thing. Our sources point out that none of these commonly held societal values actually show up on the traditional lists of virtues.
Okay, that's interesting. So virtues are different how?
Right. Virtues, according to these sources, are defined more as universal ideal standards, qualities of behavior, of just being, that are considered good for all.
Good for all. Okay.
Yeah, seen as essential for psychological development, for self-cultivation. They're supposed to hold this universal value about what's morally good, representing the highest good.
So less subjective.
Exactly. Unlike values, which are subjective, personal to you, virtues are framed as objective, meaning they're considered universally true, and intersubjective, meaning agreed upon across different people, different cultures.
And you mentioned societal values. It sounds like sometimes those things we value might even pull us away from virtues.
That's a key point the sources make, yeah. Think about it, chasing wealth or image relentlessly. That can often clash directly with trying to cultivate, say, temperance or humility, right?
Yeah. Right. They seem almost opposed sometimes.
They can be. And another thing that makes virtues feel more, actionable is the sheer number.
How so?
Well, think about values. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of things individuals might value. It's kind of overwhelming.
Yeah, true.
But when you look at these traditional virtue lists, they're much shorter. Typically, you're looking at maybe 4 to 15 key virtues.
Okay, that feels more manageable.
Way more manageable. It's like having a focused toolkit for building a good life, rather than trying to sort through a massive, messy toolbox.
A universal toolkit. I like that.
And what's really remarkable looking through these sources is just how consistently these core virtues pop up. Across nearly every major wisdom tradition for literally thousands of years, West, East, doesn't matter.
Yeah. That suggests something pretty fundamental about us, doesn't it? A shared understanding of what makes for a flourishing life.
It really does, like a kind of universal blueprint for well-being.
Okay, so if we're exploring this blueprint, this universal toolkit,
Yeah.
where do the sources say the Western tradition starts? What are the foundations there?
Well, the classical foundations are key. We often start with Plato, writing down Socrates' ideas in the Republic. He outlined what became known as the 4 hinge virtues.
What's their virtues?
Yeah, from the Latin cardo, meaning hinge.
Yeah.
Like they're pivotal, everything else swings on them. The Stoics pick these up too.
And they are.
Prudence, basically wisdom, knowing the right way to act. Fortitude, that's strength. Endurance, courage, especially when things are tough. Justice, fairness, doing right by others. And temperance, restraint, moderation, self-control.
The big 4.
The big 4. And then Aristotle, in his Nicomachean Ethics, he really dug into this. He called it the science of the good for human life.
Science, interesting.
Yeah, he differentiated between moral virtues, like the cardinal ones, and intellectual virtues. His list was a bit longer, maybe around 12 to 20 virtues. So you see the Greeks laying some serious groundwork.
Definitely. So how did that evolve?
Well, Fast forward a bit, and Christianity really absorbed and built on these classical ideas. You get the 7 heavenly virtues.
Okay.
These combine Plato's 4 cardinal virtues, prudence, fortitude, justice, temperance, with 3 theological virtues.
Theological meaning.
Meaning, according to thinkers like Thomas Aquinas, they're seen as infused by God's grace. Not something humans can fully achieve just on their own steam.
Oh, okay. And those are?
Faith, hope, and charity. And charity here is often understood as love from the Greek word agape, that selfless, divine kind of love. So these 3 are seen as gifts, helping humans connect with the divine, kind of elevating their natural goodness.
Got it. Infused by grace. Makes sense.
And there's another set in Christianity. The sources mention the 7 capital virtues. These are pretty direct. They're specifically lined up to combat the 7 deadly sins.
Oh, right. Like antidotes.
Exactly. So you have chastity versus lust, temperance versus gluttony, charity versus greed, diligence versus sloth, kindness versus envy, patience versus wrath, and humility versus pride. A very practical framework for battling temptation.
Okay, so that's a strong Western lineage. What happens when we look east? Does it resonate there too?
Oh, absolutely. The consistency is pretty striking. Take Confucius, for instance. He outlined his 5 constant virtues.
Sure.
Benevolence, kindness, humanity, honesty or uprightness, knowledge or wisdom, faithfulness or integrity, and politeness or propriety, sort of right conduct.
Okay. Similar themes already.
Definitely. And in Taoism, I mean, the classic text, the Tao Te Ching, literally translates to the Book of the Way and its virtues.
Right there in the title.
Exactly. While there's a longer list where truthfulness is sort of the central point, the most commonly cited are the 3 treasures. Benevolence, again, compassion, mercy, moderation, frugality, restraint, and humility, often phrased as not daring to be first.
Humility again. Interesting.
Yep. Then you look at Buddhism. They have the 4 Brahma Viharas, or the 4 immeasurables. These are benevolence, compassion, empathetic joy, feeling happy for others, happiness and equanimity, that kind of calm balance. These are really seen as core practices for developing the mind and spirit.
Practices, not just ideas.
Yeah, very much so. And the Yoga Sutras from Patanjali, they outline the yamas and yamas, ethical rules and observances.
Ah, yes, I've heard of those.
They include things like nonviolence, truthfulness, non-stealing, right? Use of energy, often taken as meaning mindful use of vital force, sometimes celibacy, non-greed, cleanliness, contentment, discipline, self-study, and contemplation of a higher power. A whole code for living.
It's quite a list.
It is. And you see similar things in Sikhism. Truthfulness, compassion, contentment, humility, benevolence, love for God are central.
Wow.
Even in a martial code like Bushido, the samurai way, you find justice, courage, benevolence, politeness, honesty, sincerity, honor, loyalty, and character or self-control. The overlap across these incredibly diverse systems, it's just undeniable.
It really is remarkable. It's like they all tapped into the same core human truths. Does this continue into more modern times?
Yeah, it does. You see figures like Benjamin Franklin, for example. He famously made his own list of 13 virtues he thought were necessary or desirable.
Franklin's list, right.
Things like temperance, silence, order, resolution, frugality, industry, sincerity, justice, moderation, cleanliness, tranquility, chastity, and humility. Now, the sources do note that maybe some of these lean a bit more towards personal values for self-improvement.
Like order or industry, perhaps.
Maybe, but the spirit of self-cultivation through specific qualities is clearly there. And then, bringing it right up to date, you have positive psychology.
Seligman's work?
Exactly. Martin Seligman and his colleagues researched this extensively across cultures and history, and they identified 6 core virtues that are pretty much endorsed by all major traditions.
6 universals. What are they?
Wisdom and knowledge, courage, love and humanity, justice, temperance, and spirituality or transcendence.
Wow. So modern psychology basically confirms what ancient wisdom traditions were saying all along.
Pretty much. And when you synthesize all these lists, as some scholars have done, you end up with this core set, maybe 9 primary virtues and 8 secondary ones that just keep reappearing. It really drives home this idea of a shared human understanding of the good life.
A universal blueprint built over millennia. Okay, this is fascinating.
Yeah.
But it can still feel a bit abstract. Can we dive deeper into a few of these? Like, what does temperance really mean in practice?
Yeah, let's do that. Temperance is a great one to start with because it's often misunderstood. People hear temperance and think, oh, just prohibition or grim self-denial.
Well, not very appealing.
Not really. But its modern definition, drawing from these traditions, is much broader. It's about moderation, yes, but also voluntary self-restraint.
Okay. Restraint from what?
Well, a whole range of things. Restraint from revenge, acting with mercy or forgiveness instead. Restraint from arrogance, cultivating humility, modesty. Restraint from excesses like luxury, over-the-top indulgence in food or drink. And restraint from intense emotions like rage or craving, aiming for calmness, equanimity. It's about finding balance.
Balance, that makes sense.
And Aristotle had a really subtle take on this, which I think is brilliant. He said true temperance isn't just about having self-control, fighting off unwise desires. It's about getting to a point where you don't even have those unwise desires in the first place because you've shaped your character wisely.
Whoa. Okay, that's a higher bar.
It is. He used this great analogy. He said, an intemperate person, someone lacking virtue, is like a city with bad laws, chaos inside. But someone who merely lacks self-control is like a city that has good laws, but nobody enforces them.
Ah, I see. So temperance is when the laws and the enforcement, your desires and your will are aligned.
Precisely. Your internal governance is sound. And philosophers wrestled with this. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic, saw it as key to being human, separating us from just chasing pleasure like animals. Montaigne, interestingly, thought temperance actually improves pleasure. He called it its seasoning, said intemperance ruins pleasure.
Ah, I like that seasoning.
Kant, though, added a cautionary note. He said temperance is great, essential even, but without underlying goodwill, it could just make a villain more effective, cooler under pressure.
Ooh, good point. A temperate villain is scarier.
Right. Even Darwin had a thought, suggesting it was a habit we could acquire and maybe even pass down.
Wow. And it's not just Western philosophy, right? You mentioned overlap.
Absolutely. Buddhism's middle way and emphasis on sense restraint, that's temperance. Christianity sees it as fighting gluttony, a fruit of the spirit. Hinduism has Dhamma, self-control. Jainism has non-possessiveness. It's everywhere.
It really is a universal thread.
And there's this incredibly powerful personal story about temperance from the sources. A woman named Candace Knight spoke at a dedication for some frescoes depicting the virtues.
Okay.
Years later, she reflected on it. By then, she was a law student. She'd overcome incredible hardship, poverty, gangs, drugs, crime to become the first person in her family to graduate college.
Wow.
And she said she finally understood temperance. She saw herself as that stoic woman walking amid that fantastic forest filled with strange beasts, the temptations and dangers of her past life, but refusing to give up, fighting that underworld lifestyle.
That's incredibly moving.
Isn't it? She said that personal struggle made the virtue forever burned into her consciousness. It shows temperance isn't passive denial, it's active strength, real grit in facing life's challenges.
Yeah, that really brings it home. It's not theoretical at all. Okay, so if temperance is about that inner balance and strength, what about hope? The sources called it the anchor of the soul. That sounds pretty essential too.
Absolutely essential. In the Christian tradition, theological hope is specific. It's a mix of desiring something ultimate like union with God, eternal happiness, and having a firm expectation of receiving it. It's seen as an act of the will, but also a gift infused by God.
Okay, so a divinely supported expectation.
Right. Paul the Apostle put it beautifully in Hebrews. Let us hold unwaveringly to our confession that gives us hope, for he who made the promise is trustworthy. It's about trust in something bigger.
But hope exists outside of religion too, obviously. How does psychology see it?
Yeah, psychologist Charles R. Snyder did a lot of work on this. He defines psychological hope as having 3 parts. First, you need a desirable goal. Second, you need to be able to see pathways, plausible ways to actually reach that goal.
Okay, goal and pathways. What's the third?
Agency. You need to believe you have the power, the capability to actually move along those pathways. Without agency, Snyder said, it's just wishful thinking, not true hope.
Ah, the belief you can actually do it.
Exactly. He contrasted that wishful hope with aspirational hope, which has that strong conviction and drive behind it.
That makes a lot of sense.
And, poetry often captures these things so well. Emily Dickinson's famous poem, Hope is the Thing with Feathers That Perches in the Soul.
Oh, I know that one.
It speaks to hope's resilience, right? How it keeps singing in the chillest land and on the strangest sea and asks for nothing in return. It's just there, an enduring part of being human.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about charity, often called the greatest virtue.
Yeah, Thomas Aquinas certainly ranked it as the highest. And it connects directly to Jesus' command to love one another. But it's crucial to understand that charity, especially in this context, means way more than just, donating money to a cause.
Right. It's not just about giving spare change.
Not at all. The root is the Greek word caritas, which is really about a profound, selfless love for all people. It's described as a giving of oneself, giving your time, your empathy, your attention, your energy.
A giving of self.
Exactly. It's seen as the direct antidote to greed because it shifts your focus entirely off yourself and onto the well-being of others. From me to we or me to you.
And there's that symbol of the pelican.
Oh, right. The mythical pelican that supposedly pierced its own breast to feed its starving young with its blood.
Intense image.
Very. It became a symbol for Christ's sacrifice, but also for this deeper meaning of charity, this idea that true nourishment, true life comes from self-giving. The sources quote someone saying, "Without empathy or concern for others, we wither as well."
We wither too. Wow.
And Herbert Bissell, described as a lifelong volunteer, apparently preferred the word love to charity because he felt charity sometimes got narrowed down to just helping the outcast. He saw love as all-encompassing, all-embracing, vital for everyone. Giving of yourself is the core, however you do it.
That's powerful. Okay, these virtues are clearly interconnected. The sources mention those St. Thomas frescoes again in relation to other virtues.
They did, yeah. They offer really interesting visual takes. Take justice, the standard image, blindfolded woman, scales, symbolizing impartiality.
Right.
But in the St. Thomas fresco, the figures representing justice are not blindfolded. They're looking at each other, perfectly balanced on the scales. The idea seems to be that justice involves seeing each other clearly, acknowledging our differences, but recognizing our fundamental equality.
Seeing equality despite difference. That's a nuanced take.
It is. And they included a thunderbird eagle, drawing from Native American symbolism, representing a mediator between heaven and earth, upholding sacred principles. Someone quoted Honorable Rosalie Wall, connected it directly to the need for equal justice for everyone, regardless of background.
A powerful blend of symbols. What about prudence?
Prudence, wisdom, and action, traditionally shown as a teacher. In the fresco, it's depicted as a woman calmly facing a dragon.
A dragon. Isn't that usually bad?
Not always. In many Asian cultures, dragons symbolize wisdom and power. Here, the dragon holds a diploma, and the woman and dragon mirror each other. It seems to represent confronting your inner self, your inhibitions, echoing Socrates' "Know thyself" to make wise choices.
Know thyself to choose wisely.
Okay. And Brother Michael Collins is quoted reflecting on dedicating his life to education, seeing it as helping young people learn to make those prudent choices, which affects everyone's lives.
Makes sense. And fortitude. You said earlier it's not just physical strength.
Exactly. It's often mistaken for brute force, but it's really about inner courage, resilience, perseverance through hardship. The fresco imagery here is apparently incredibly striking.
How so?
It shows two figures in vibrant native dress releasing a mule. Now, the mule is loaded with symbolism, stubbornness, burden, but also specifically evoking the 40 acres and a mule promise made to freed slaves after the Civil War, a promise largely broken.
So a symbol of oppression and broken promises.
Precisely. And the figures, particularly the woman who takes an active role, are shown breaking free from this burden. Her exposed breasts symbolize strength, life-giving nourishment, raw power. Matthew Little, a civil rights leader, apparently saw it as representing the nonviolent struggle, the immense fortitude required to confront injustice without resorting to violence. True strength.
Wow, that's a lot deeper than just flexing muscles.
Way deeper. And finally, faith, often seen as the bedrock.
The foundation for the others.
In many views, yes. The fresco shows a family under the sun, peaceful. There's a goldfinch, a Christian symbol for Christ's suffering and salvation, and a tortoise, which in some Native American traditions represents creation and endurance.
A mix of symbols again.
Yeah, emphasizing universality. And Reverend Donald Meisel described faith beautifully as the conviction, the awareness that something of God is in every human face. He called it the mother of courage, of the ability to go on loving in the face of adversity, to forgive, to be forgiven, to begin anew. It's that trust that lets you keep going.
Okay, these examples really show how interconnected and, frankly, how relevant these virtues still feel. They're not just dusty old concepts.
Not at all. They're like a living guide.
So what's the upshot then? What happens if we, try to live more virtuously? Or what happens if we don't?
Well, this brings us back to that idea of a choice, really. A choice between operating from what some traditions call the lower soul versus the higher soul.
Lower versus higher.
Yeah. The lower soul is basically driven by immediate gratification-seeking pleasure, avoiding pain. Think about the Buddhist 3 poisons.
Greed, anger, ignorance.
Exactly. Greed or intense sensual attachment, anger or hatred, and ignorance or delusion. They believe these are what keep the wheel of samsara, the cycle of suffering, spinning endlessly.
Okay.
And you can easily see how those poisons bloom into the 7 deadly sins we talked about earlier, right? Greed fuels gluttony, lust. Anger becomes wrath. Ignorance can lead to pride, maybe sloth or despair. These are essentially states that arise when virtue is absent.
So vices are like the natural outcome of ignoring virtues.
That's one way to put it. And the sources suggest the consequences are pretty significant. Without actively cultivating virtues, we're just much more susceptible to things like poor impulse control, addiction, mental health struggles, just general suffering.
It makes intuitive sense.
And some sources go even further. They argue that vices don't just cause psychological suffering, they actually damage our life force energy, our qi in terms of Chinese qigong.
Damage our energy. Serious.
Yeah, one source mentioned that in qigong, cultivating virtue is considered responsible for something like 70% of your overall energy cultivation and health.
70%. That's huge. Our character literally impacts our vitality.
According to that tradition, absolutely. Which leads to a really interesting idea. What if virtue isn't something we have to add? What if it's actually our natural state?
Our natural state.
Many traditions suggest we're born with a fundamental goodness, an innate potential for these virtues. But then life happens, conditioning, experiences, society, and we can accumulate vices, get pulled away from that core goodness.
So becoming virtuous is more like uncovering something already there, returning to it.
Exactly. It's a process of return. And that requires real self-observation, self-examination, looking honestly at our motivations, our habits. It's not about pretending to be perfect. It's about consciously choosing actions that align with that deeper, original nature or self, moving back towards wholeness.
Okay, so it's not just thinking nice thoughts. It's got to be active.
Oh, absolutely. The sources emphasize this again and again. Virtues are highly actionable. They demand conscious action every day.
Every day.
Every day. Small choices, consistent effort. That's what guides us toward that higher self, makes us, as the sources say, more fully human. Or, as the Taoists might put it, true companions of heaven and earth, living in harmony with the natural order.
Conscious action every day. That's the key.
It really seems to be. It's the practice, not just the theory.
Okay. Well, that brings us toward the end of this really fascinating deep dive into virtues. We've covered a lot of ground: ancient Greece, Christianity, Confucius, Lao Tzu, Buddha, modern psychology.
It's been quite a journey through time and traditions.
And the consistent message seems to be the universal nature, the enduring relevance of these qualities. They're not just dusty relics. They're practical tools for living well right now.
Definitely. We've seen how they act as a kind of remedy for what weighs us down, helping us shift from being driven by fleeting desires, that lower soul, towards being guided by something deeper, that higher soul, restoring energy, finding purpose.
So to wrap up, here's something for you, the listener, to maybe chew on. If virtues really are our underlying natural state, and if consciously practicing them helps restore our energy, our balance, and guides us toward our best selves, what's one small conscious action you could take today? Just one thing to practice one of these timeless virtues, maybe patience, maybe kindness, maybe temperance, even if it feels a bit difficult at first. How might just that one small action start to reshape your own sense of well-being and maybe, just maybe, ripple out into the world around you?